When you're watching a romcom or any other movie that involves a love line between the main characters, you are kind of expecting them to look and feel natural. Alas, that is not the case for some movies. Whether it was actors' fault or the flaws in the plotline, these couples just couldn't deliver what they were supposed to: believable steamy romance that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. From classics like Star Wars to newer additions like 50 Shades of Grey, we present you 10 on-screen couples with the worst chemistry ever. Christian and Anastasia, 50 Shades of Grey. For something that was supposed to be an incredibly hot fan fiction, sorry, we mean a bold and steamy movie, the main characters of 50 Shades of Grey just couldn't deliver it on screen. Was it the slightly controversial BDSM topic that made the actors uncomfortable and unable to give their best performance? Or maybe the books themselves that lacked believability? We know what Jamie Dornan can do on screen, The Fall, anyone, so we can only blame this fiasco of a movie on the lack of chemistry between him and Dakota Johnson. Amsterdam and Jenny, Gangs of New York. Even talented handsome men like Leonardo DiCaprio have their bad acting days. And it was not so much about acting in the Gangs of New York, but rather casting issues. Don't get us wrong here, both Cameron Diaz and Leo are amazing actors on their own, but put together, there's so much to be desired. Or maybe it's the fact that originally Martin Scorsese had Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro in mind for those roles. Anyways, the end result is quite unimpressive. Bella and Edward, Twilight. How is it possible that two people that were actually in love with each other in real life could not perform on screen? Either their love life was incredibly lacking passion or their acting was just not good enough. We've seen Robert Pattinson in a variety of other movies where he was less sparkly and more human, and he performed great. Kristen Stewart has a tendency to lack emotion, but it seems that's not the case here. But the two of them were actually dating. Geez. Bruce and Rachel, Batman Begins. If you want to witness the ultimate lack of heat between two characters, as well as actors, then watch Rachel Dawes and Bruce Wayne trying to interact on screen. Their performance as a future-to-be couple is flat, and while the acting is not tortured like with some of the movies on this list, there is no passion whatsoever. Batman is a loner and doesn't really need a love interest with the type of vigilante life he's leading, yet Rachel Dawes had to be, and the audience had to suffer through the scenes of failed attempts to portray love interest. Elise and Frank, The Tourist. It might have not been the most exciting movie plot of all time, but seriously, how boring can relationship between Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie be? Answer is boring to the unbearable extent. Johnny Depp is one of the Hollywood's most prominent actors, while Angelina Jolie's beauty and acting prowess are legendary as well. So how could it be that when put together these two couldn't muster up an ounce of passion? Nevertheless, we must admit that they look quite dazzling on screen. Lewis and Clark, Man of Steel. You may or may not be a fan of the movie, but we believe it wasn't that bad in general. Yet when it comes to the chemistry between the two main characters, Henry Cavill and Amy Adams' performance just fall flat. It's a real tragedy for such iconic characters like Lois Lane and Clark Kent. We can't but wonder what happened. We've seen Henry Cavill in Tudors and know that he's more than capable to depict any emotion possible, while Amy Adams has starred in so many great movies that we'll need to make a separate article just for that. And yet, Lois and Clark didn't have a spark, which did not help the movie at all. Mike and Paige, Magic Mike. Channing Tatum might not be everyone's cup of tea, but we can all admit that he's a good-looking fella, right? That's why we don't understand why Cody Horn always looked so uninterested whenever they had some romantic scenes together. But maybe it's not the actor's fault, because who puts a romantic plotline into a movie about strippers, anyway? Hollywood just has this weird idea that if a movie has male and female characters, there just has to be a love line, or else some kind of disaster will happen to the world's order. Padme and Anakin, Star Wars. Why couldn't two good-looking talented actors depict a passionate love story when it was the only thing that kept the whole movie together? It's a mystery waiting to be solved. One thing we know for sure, though, it was painful to watch Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen to even talk to each other, let alone fall in love. Star Wars Episode II Attack of the Clones can be called a bad movie for many reasons, but this terrible chemistry between the main characters and lackluster dialogues that seem to have been written by a 5-year-old seem to top the list. Rick and Giggly, Giggly. The movie was seriously awful and got not 1, not 2, but 7 Razzies as well as bunch of other worst movie awards. Kind of an achievement, don't you think? The almost offensive plotline of a lesbian turned straight by the right guy is not the worst part of the movie. What really baffled the audience was the complete lack of passion between the main characters Rick and Giggly, played by Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck. What made things even worse is the fact that the two were actually dating in real life. Harry and Ginny, Harry Potter. We can't overlook the fact that Harry and Ginny look completely unnatural on screen. In the books we didn't have an ounce of doubt that these two were meant to be, but in the movie Daniel Radcliffe looks absolutely stiff next to Bonnie Wright, making their non-existent chemistry obvious to the viewers. And now we just have to live with that.